that is this time that we are living in now, where there is radical social change going on. And I've explained that that radical change is, being powered by our technology, and it is bringing us to a change in consciousness, which is ultimately what it's all about. And I also explained that some of these changes are not very smooth. In other words, they look very much like a zigzag or a two steps forward, one step back approach, while other changes are fairly swift and conclusive and kind of go in a straight line. And the difference there is consciousness. It's consciousness. A good example of that is, what's going on with the acceptance of gay marriage and gay rights, which had been just impossible for decades. In fact, 3-4 years ago, unthinkable that as many states have done, that gay marriage would be legal. And then all of a sudden it seemed like state after state quickly got on board. And that has to do with consciousness. We reach a point, a tipping point, if you will, where our consciousness has evolved enough that we can accept these things and make these changes immediately. Other changes, well, consciousness may not be evolving quite rapidly enough. So I've had listeners to the show, who have, heard me talk about transition era and all of this kind of thing. Talk to me about, well, how could we be in a transition era now when it seems like with the election of Donald Trump, we've been set back to, what some might consider to be the dark ages. And I try to remind people that, and part of it is my fault, because in talking about the transition era and talking about the changes that are happening, I tend to emphasize the positive in it, just because it's sometimes hard for people to see that. But for sure, during this transition era, there's going to be upheaval. There are going to be things you don't like. It's part of the process. When things change or evolve, there's a breakdown and a rebuild. It's a process for most of these things. And so, what's happened with Donald Trump is not unique to this country. It's happening worldwide. There is a pullback, what they call it, a populist, nationalist sensibility, where countries have their political groups, their political parties are reacting to the ideas of a unified world. So this is why you're hearing so much about, pulling out of the European Union, the Brexit in England, or the pulling out of the Trans-Pacific Partnership, the trade deal which is supposed to make trade among countries easier, where you're hearing about tariffs of goods being exported into our country, or you're hearing about uh, people not being allowed to be in this country. Uh, you're hearing about the Syrian refugees, uh, being turned away. And it's happening here, and it's quite disturbing for many people. And believe me, I understand. But if you look at what's happening in response to this, I'll just give you some of the latest now. One of the executive orders that Mr. Trump has put into place has to do with freezing the visas of people who are from certain countries, including Yemen, Iran, Iraq, Middle Eastern countries. Countries that he has deemed to be, overwhelmingly Muslim. It's basically a ban on Muslim people. And as you might expect, people are up in arms about this. People are saying, and I can't disagree, that this is not who we are in the United States. That it's discriminatory. That it's broad-based and unnecessary. The idea is that he will be protecting us from terrorists coming in the country. If you just don't allow any Muslims in at all, then you won't have Muslim terrorists. I think the weaknesses in that approach are pretty self-evident. So here in the Northern Virginia area, where I am broadcasting from, our governor, Terry McAuliffe, has gone on air to say that Virginia welcomes all people, all immigrants, all refugees. There are protests going on in the airport that started, starting yesterday. And now the latest news is that a federal judge here in Virginia issued a temporary restraining order which will bar the Department of Homeland Security from removing 50 to 60 individuals who are legal permanent residents. A New York federal judge issued an emergency order temporarily barring the U.S. from deporting people from countries under President Donald Trump's travel ban. This is from U.S. District Judge Leonie Brinkema. And he ordered that permanent legal residents detained at Dulles International Airport shall have access to lawyers, and that U.S. immigration agencies are forbidden from removing them for 7 days from the order's issuance. So it's a stopgap measure for sure. But the response to this is incredible. It's just incredible. As I mentioned, our Governor Terry McAuliffe, our Attorney General Mark Herring, all went to the airport to denounce this order. And even, some of his Republican colleagues are saying that it is unconstitutional to ban people from our country on the basis of religion. So, that's one response. Now, if you were watching the news last week, you might have heard about the Women's March that happened after Trump's inaugural, which, by the way, was met with quite a bit of resistance as well. Well, these women's marches, well, they started in D.C. About 500,000 people ended up being there. It was originally, you know, designed for a gathering of about 200,000. So it doubled its capacity. Um, and in response to that, there were women's marches around the world that were marching in protest to uh, President Trump, the disparaging things that he has said about women and minorities and immigrants. So, as far as the transition era that we are in, uh, we're still in it. And in fact, his election may just be one of the most galvanizing events that has happened. You know, when there are agents of change that happen, uh, they're not always the change that happens isn't always the change that they put into motion. The change that happens can also be a reaction against what they stand for. And again, so much of this is supported by and carried on by our new technologies. For instance, the women's march that happened began in social media. It wasn't something that was talked about in the news media very much. Word of this was put out primarily through Facebook. And as I mentioned, a gathering that was expected to accommodate about 200,000 people turned out to be more than twice as large. This is the same thing that happened with the Arab Spring demonstrations that happened in 2011. And also for the Tea Party, Occupy movements, the Black Lives Matter, all of these social revolutions, if you will, are driven by social media and not traditional media. And I don't see that changing. In fact, I think it's just going to continue even more. The reason why is that traditional media, you know, the news media that you watch, even, you know, the 24-hour news networks like CNN and so forth, they can't move as fast as Facebook or Twitter or any of the other social media platforms out there. They can't move as fast as a text. So before you know it, you have people, they can't move as fast as Facebook. So before you know it, while traditional media is focused on something else going on, or getting access to a particular person to interview them or talk to them about something, a movement like the Women's March is you know, happening right behind their back, and they turn around and all of a sudden it's going on. And, you know, from their perspective, again, because they just can't move as fast. So I know it's difficult for many people. I know it's painful, but as I mentioned, you know, in talking about Donald Trump, I always mention the idea of the Heyoka medicine. In Native American cosmology, Heyoka is the medicine of the joker, of the clown. Heyoka shamans, Heyoka warriors, they throw everything into disarray. They do everything backwards, they turn everything upside down. They may come to solemn ceremonies and do